Welcome to another safety-driven videocast. I'm here today with Randy Wastrom of Coastal Training Group and BC Trucking Association. Got it right again.
Absolutely.
I'm doing wonderfully well with that. Randy, we keep getting queries on the National Safety Code. Could you give us a quick overview of what it is, what its intentions were?
The National Safety Code came into play in 1988, and what it was, at the time, the industry was deregulated. So a lot of the rules that applied up to that point were basically deregulated, and they had to find a way of still maintaining safety in the industry. So they came up with something called the National Safety Code, and it encompasses the Motor Vehicle Act, the Motor Vehicle Act regulations in BC, the Commercial Transport Act, and the Commercial Transport Act regulations. It also encompasses things like transportation of dangerous goods, basically safe driving policies is what they're looking for. How can they maintain so that vehicle's safe on the road? So it's things like, there's four main areas of the National Safety Code. One is vehicles, two is drivers, three is the hours of service they're allowed to work, and four is what we call special safety requirements, and that's things like transportation of dangerous goods, load securement, those sorts of things.
Right.
So when we talk about the National Safety Code, it regulates certain vehicles. So vehicles, it covers things like taxis, limousines. It covers buses, school buses, large buses, trucks, truck trailers, all vehicles used in commercial enterprises. But there are certain regulations that apply to some and not others. The National Safety Code for trucks basically starts off at 5,000 kilograms in BC. It's 4,500 kilograms nationally, but 5,000 kilograms in BC is when we start to enforce the National Safety Code. Now, okay. I told you about hours of service. Well, hours of service applies to buses with 10 passengers or more. Right. And for trucks, it applies to any vehicle 11,795 kilograms and above. So from 5,000 kilograms to 11,794 kilograms, the hours of service does not apply. So it's only after that point, 11,795 kilograms and above, that the National Safety Code is applicable. And that,
so does that mean then that you wouldn't even have to maintain hours of service records at the company for a lighter vehicle?
No, you do not.
Okay.
That's not an enforceable item.
Okay.
Okay, so when we get above the 11,795 kilograms, there's two rules there. One is if your company operates purely within a 160-kilometer radius, they have one standard for that, which means that there's some general rules. You have to return back to your home terminal every night.
Right.
You have to return back within 16 hours. You have to have 8 consecutive hours off duty, and that the company has to record all your hours and maintain your hours of service during that time. So right. At any time, they can come back and ask for the last 6 months of the driver's hours to make sure he doesn't exceed the minimum. And the minimum is not driving more than 13 hours without 8 consecutive hours off duty, working 14 hours without 8 consecutive hours off duty, and not driving after 14 hours of being on duty, not being on duty more than 70 hours in 7 days,
right.
Not being on duty more than 120 hours in 14 days with a 24-hour break at the 70th hour, 24 right. consecutive hours off. So what that means is that when we're operating within the 160-kilometer radius, the company must maintain all those records. Outside the 160-kilometer radius, a driver has to keep a logbook. And a logbook is basically he records all his own hours on a graph, and he's got to make sure that he still complies with those records.
That's a question we get all the time, and that's worth clearing up. Does it have to be that continuous line graph? Because some people say yes and some people say no.
There are other ways, because now we can go to electronic onboard recording devices
right.
that will come up with, they don't have to have a graph, they can still record the hours.
Right, but if you're doing it with a pencil, with a pen, it has to be that graph, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. In most cases, it does. It would be the graph. That's the easiest way of recording it, and the easiest way to be able to monitor that. There are other ways. The graph is what I've worked with all the time. And that's something that we teach is how to fill out the graph properly. And they have to make sure they're filling out the graph, and it's filled out to the last change of duty status. So if you ever get pulled over, it better show that you are driving at this point and exactly what that means. There are other things that we have to look at too. That creates sometimes a bit of a problem too, is when drivers get too far behind on their graph and they don't keep it up.
Right.
Keep it up. So now they have to go back and try to figure out what they were doing. we have to record certain things on that graph. For instance, if you have a brake check that's mandatory brake check, you've got to record that you pulled in there to do that.
Right.
You have to record, for load securement information, you have to record when you've loaded a truck, a flat deck or anything like that where you're going to check the load, you have to record that you checked it 80 kilometers after it was loaded, every 3 hours, every 240 kilometers, or every change of duty status, and that has to be reflected on your log. You also have to log if you get pulled over in a roadside inspection, if you have anything else that would affect your driving. So if you have to stop and get out of the truck, that's obviously a change of duty status. So you record all that on your log, and you have to record the location of where that happened.
Yeah, that's something that always was a bugaboo with us. We were more local, so we never really left the province for a lot of the runs most of the runs we were doing. But you still have to record that it is Vancouver, BC.
Absolutely.
It has to record the province or state.
Absolutely. Yeah. The city name and the like you say, province or state for sure. So that's kind of an overview of the hours of service.
Right.
The other things we have to look at are pre-trip inspections. Pre-trip inspections are required in every vehicle over 5,000 kilograms for trucks. And when we hit to 14,600 kilograms, then we have to have a written trip inspection report in the vehicle. So from 5,000 kilograms up to 14,600 kilograms, we have to do a pre-trip every day. But it's only after 14,600 and above that we actually have to have a recorded form indicating that the pre-trip was done, listing the defects, the driver's name, all those sorts of things.
Now that would probably be what gives rise to what's often called the short form of the pre-trip.
Absolutely.
It's just a quick checkbox and
yes,
a quick sign-off.
And a lot of the forms that we're using are actually not pre-trips, but they're defects reports. So basically you only record the defects that you're going to find on that vehicle, and you record it and then determine whether the vehicle is safe to drive or not.
So not so much a short form, it's just the fact that you're driving a slightly lighter vehicle and it's not required by law.
That's right. Absolutely. So unless you're driving a vehicle 14,600 kilograms or above, like in terms of trucks, then you have to have a pre-trip. But if it's not that height, we don't have to have. Some companies will make it their mandate to ensure guys are recording some sort of pre-trip, just so that they have a device to record any defects they found on that vehicle.
Right, okay.
So the other thing is we've got hours of service, we've got drivers, we've got pre-trip inspections, we've got vehicles that are kind of covered by pre-trips. Now the National Safety Code also says that a company has to also maintain those vehicles, so he's got to keep records for all the maintenance that they do on that vehicle, when it's fueled up, any modifications done to the vehicle if they're involved in accidents. If we have recalls, one that we did the recall and we can show all the paperwork that recall was done, motor vehicle inspections, commercial vehicle inspection program if you have that, when those vehicles are recorded. So pretty much everything to do with that vehicle, any modifications included.
It's interesting. It's a question we get here too occasionally is that I'm an owner-operator, so how do I record that the work was done when I changed the light myself? And it's just a simple matter of saying that it was you that changed it, as long as that's recorded. Right.
We actually have a form through the BC Trucking Association, and it's called a monthly maintenance log. And a driver can actually keep that in his cab. It's got 31 days on it, so anytime he makes any modifications to the truck, he can record the mileage, the description of the work, who did it, and if there was an invoice attached to it. So he can record that 31 days. And we're actually recommending that everybody keep one of those in their trucks, because drivers do a lot of maintenance on the vehicle that they don't get credit for, and maintenance is pretty critical. Like maybe adding air to a tire. Well, the tire's got a leak in it, so if you realize that 3 or 4 days in a row you're always adding air to that tire, we've got a problem.
Exactly.
So typically, a mechanic wouldn't know about that unless he can see the recording of it. But that goes for brake adjustments. Maybe he's got to adjust a brake all the time. He could have a problem with lights. When he greases a fifth wheel, for example, that could be an that's technically a maintenance issue that he could be going for. So there's a lot of small things like that we could include in there. But that's the sort of thing that we want to do at a driver's level for maintenance. So by having that monthly maintenance log, it addresses exactly what you brought up, that we can actually record that information, and even the subtle things that he does, like maybe even cleaning out the cab, he noticed there's a seat problem.
It's important. I mean, like you say, drivers do a lot of work that they just don't get credit for.
Right. It's almost like, I know for a fact you're in the aviation industry. You were a pilot, so it's like that. Anything you do to a plane has to be recorded.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very, very intimately or very exactly has to be recorded for a number of reasons. If a plane crash is a plane crash, but they want to find out what the maintenance is. Well, trucks are very similar to that. They want to know what caused a truck crash, and there's considerably more trucks out there than there are planes in the sky. Let me tell you. And you know, a lot of times we don't recognize the trucks because they don't create an issue. They're just going by every day. You know, we once asked a school, how many trucks go by your school every day? And we were told 3, 4, 5 trucks. When in fact, when we count them a day, there's 323 trucks went by, but nobody saw them because they're good drivers. They don't make noise. They don't affect anybody. And that's what we see, and or what we don't see. We don't recognize that there's a lot of really good drivers out there, companies that look after their trucks very well.
Just out there doing their job every day.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Heroes of the highway.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So that's a great overview on the National Safety Code and a lot of its requirements.
Yes.
And you know, I would recommend though that if you're a driver who's moving from local driving to long distance and you all of a sudden need to do that log, I'd be looking for somebody like Randy to run you through a quick course on that hours of service. Just stay out of trouble.
Absolutely. And we do run National Safety Code courses with the BC Trucking Association,
Right.
both level 1 and level 2. If you're going to write for your National Safety Code, if you're going to apply for it, these courses address that test as well.
Perfect.
So,
Thanks very much, Randy.
thank you, Earl.